I'm Delaney, 31 years old, and 3 nights ago my mother showed up at my door at 11 p.m. She was crying so hard she couldn't get the words out. The woman who hadn't answered a single one of my calls for almost 2 years was standing on my porch in the rain, begging me to let her in. 2 years ago, I called my parents from a hospital parking lot, shaking, alone, and told them I had stage 3 lymphoma. My father's response was one sentence that carved itself into my bones. 7 months of chemo, 41 trips to the infusion center, not one visit, not one card, not one phone call that wasn't about my brother's engagement party, bridal shower, rehearsal dinner, or wedding. Now my mother needed me. My father needed me. And my answer came in exactly 5 words. Before I go further, if this story hits something in you, consider liking and subscribing, but only if it actually means something. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what the weather's like there tonight. I want to know who's listening. Let me take you back 2 years, to a Tuesday in March. I was 29, an associate architect at a firm called Halverson and Wright in downtown Chicago. The kind of place with polished concrete floors, Aesop hand soap in the bathrooms, and a waiting list for summer internships that stretched 6 months deep. I had clawed my way into that firm from a junior drafting position at a company nobody had heard of. 4 years of 80-hour weeks, of redrawing elevations until 2 in the morning, of eating dinner out of a Tupperware at my desk. I was finally designing real projects: a boutique hotel in Lincoln Park, a mixed-use tower in the West Loop, work with my name on the plaques. My apartment was in Andersonville, a second-floor walk-up with original 1920s molding and windows that rattled in the wind. I had a rescue cat named Clementine who only tolerated me for food, a reading chair by the window, and a record player I'd bought myself for my 27th birthday. I had a life. A small one, but mine. I was training for a half marathon. I had dinner every Wednesday with my coworker Tasha, who would become more important to me than she ever could have guessed. That Tuesday began the way any Tuesday began. Cold pour-over at 6. Train downtown at 7. A review meeting with the partners at 9. I was presenting renderings for the hotel lobby when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I silenced it. It buzzed again. Silenced it again. On the third buzz, I stepped out of the conference room with an apologetic wave and answered in the hallway. "Miss Brooks, this is the imaging center at Northwestern. Dr. Halpern needs you to come in this afternoon to discuss your scan results." I remember exactly how the hallway smelled. Printer toner and whatever citrus cleaner the janitorial staff used. I remember the color of the carpet, that specific institutional gray that absorbs everything. I remember thinking, they never call you in the same day for good news. I don't remember the cab ride to the hospital. I don't remember checking in or sitting in the waiting room. My memory picks up again in Dr. Halpern's office. She was in her 50s, silver-haired, with kind eyes and the posture of someone who had delivered difficult news many times and had never learned how to make it easier. "Delaney, the biopsy came back. You have diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. It's stage 3. It's aggressive, but it's highly treatable. We need to start you on R-CHOP chemotherapy as soon as possible. I'd like to schedule your port placement for Thursday." I sat in that leather chair and watched her mouth move and felt my own body detach from itself. There's a moment when you receive that kind of news where you split in half. Half of you listens to the doctor explain treatment protocols and survival statistics. The other half of you is already somewhere else, already grieving a future that just got smaller. "Do you have someone who can be here with you for your next appointment?" she asked gently. "A spouse? A parent? This journey is easier with support." I thought about my mother and father, about my younger brother Hunter, about the engagement party that had consumed every family conversation for the past month. My brother Hunter had proposed to a woman named Ainsley 3 weeks earlier, and my parents had already begun planning what my mother called the social event of the season. Hunter got everything he wanted, always had. But surely cancer was different. Surely this would finally be the thing that made me visible to them. "I'll call my dad," I said. "Here is what you need to understand about the Brooks family. My father, Gregory Brooks, is a commercial real estate developer in Chicago. He believes success is the only moral currency and that affection is a reward for performance. He did not hug us growing up. He shook our hands when we did well. My mother, Patricia, manages his life and his image. She curates, she hosts. She has strong opinions about thank you notes and weak opinions about her own daughter. And then there was Hunter. 2.5 years younger than me. Charming in the way that certain men learn to be charming because the world has told them from birth that their charm is a kind of genius. Hunter went to Northwestern on my father's dime. Hunter got his first job because my father played golf with the CEO. Hunter drove a Range Rover that showed up in the driveway one Christmas morning with a bow on it. I drove a used Civic that I had financed myself on a junior architect's salary. When I got my license to practice architecture, my mother sent me a card with a gift card to Williams-Sonoma. When Hunter closed his first deal at his father's friend's firm, my parents threw him a dinner at the Chicago Club and invited 40 people. I was invited too. I sat at a table in the back with distant cousins and listened to my father give a toast about how proud he was of his son, the future of the Brooks name. I walked out of Dr. Halpern's office and found a stairwell. I sat on a concrete step and dialed my father's number. My hands shook so badly I had to redial twice. He picked up on the fourth ring. "Delaney, what is it? I'm with a client. I want you to understand what I did next. I want you to understand that I am not a woman who cries in public, who inconveniences strangers, who asks for attention. I was raised to be small. But in that stairwell, I sobbed. I gasped the words out. Dad, I have cancer, stage 3 lymphoma. I just found out. I'm at the hospital." There was a pause. Not a long one. Maybe 2 seconds. I could hear him breathing. I could hear a voice in the background. A man laughing. Probably his client. And then he said the sentence that I would carry with me, word, for the rest of my life. "Delaney, we have a lot happening with your brother right now. Can this wait? Can this wait?" I want you to really sit with that for a moment. My father, told that his firstborn had cancer, asked if cancer could be scheduled around his son's engagement party. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just listened as he continued. "Your mother has been working on Hunter's engagement party for 3 weeks. Ainsley's parents are flying in from Nashville. There's going to be press coverage. We cannot have a distraction right now. You've always been resourceful. You'll figure out the treatment logistics. We'll check in with you soon." Soon. That word. Soon. I sat in that stairwell for 40 minutes after he hung up. Nobody came to find me. Eventually, a janitor walked past and asked if I was okay. A stranger in a green uniform with a mop bucket was the first person that day to ask if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I wasn't. That night, I opened a folder on my phone. I named it Evidence, not Family, the way some people might have. Evidence. Because part of me, the architect in me who thinks in load-bearing walls and structural integrity, knew I was going to need proof of this one day. I took a screenshot of the call log, 11:47 a.m., duration 2 minutes and 18 seconds. I added it to the folder. That was the last time I called my father voluntarily for 22 months. My first chemo infusion was on a Thursday. I drove myself. I parked in the concrete garage on the 6th level, walked to the elevator, and rode up to the oncology floor alone. The infusion center was bright, almost aggressively cheerful, with potted plants and a fish tank, and a volunteer who offered me warm blankets and graham crackers. I was assigned to Bay 11. The nurse who accessed my port was named Marcus. He had tattoos down both forearms and the gentlest hands I had ever felt. He asked me who my support person was. I told him I was doing this one solo. He nodded without judgment. He made me tea. He adjusted my blanket. He came back every 15 minutes just to check. Not because he needed to, but because he knew. I looked around the infusion bay while the Rituxan dripped into my vein. In Bay 9, a woman in her 60s held her husband's hand while he slept beside her, his head on a folded jacket. In Bay 14, a young man read to his grandmother from a worn paperback of Wendell Berry poems. In Bay 7, a mother braided her teenage daughter's thinning hair, both of them laughing at some private joke. Bay 11 had me. Just me. I texted my mother before the drip started, heading into first chemo. Nervous, but okay. She replied 4 hours later, after I was home on my bathroom floor vomiting so violently I had broken a blood vessel in my eye. The message read, "Hang in there, honey. Ainsley's mother just called. She's flying in early to help with venue visits. Isn't that so sweet of her?" I screenshotted it, added it to the folder, wrote back, "So sweet. Have fun." I didn't tell her I had just crawled from the toilet to the shower because I couldn't stand. I didn't tell her I was so cold my teeth were chattering even though the heat was on. I didn't tell her anything. I was learning. I was learning what my mother wanted from me, which was nothing, and I was learning how to give her exactly that. I met Tasha Oduya the following week at work. She was a junior associate on my team, 26, originally from Minneapolis, and she had the kind of warm directness that I had been starved for my whole life. She found me in the office kitchen one afternoon, staring at the coffee machine without moving. I had been standing there for 11 minutes. I know because she told me later. "Delaney, hey, you good?" I almost gave her the automatic answer, the one I had trained into my bones. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." Instead, I heard myself say, "I started chemo last Thursday." She didn't flinch. She didn't get performatively sad. She just nodded and said, "Okay, what do you need? What do you need?" 4 words. Nobody had asked me that in my entire life. I started crying into the office coffee machine, and Tasha pulled me into the empty conference room and shut the door, and sat with me until I could breathe again. From that day forward, Tasha drove me to every single chemo appointment. Every single one. 41 trips to the infusion center over 7 months. She worked her schedule around mine. She took notes during my oncology appointments because the chemo brain was real. She brought me bone broth and ginger candies and a weighted blanket and a knitted cap with a sunflower on it when my hair started to fall out. She was 26 years old, and she was more of a sister to me than any blood relative I had ever known. Hunter's engagement party happened 4 weeks into my chemo. My mother called me the day before, her voice bright and distracted. "Delaney, we need to talk about tomorrow." "Okay. Your father and I have been discussing. We think it might be better if you don't come." I held the phone away from my ear for a moment. Then I brought it back. "Why is that, Mom?" "Well, darling, you just look a bit unwell. And the photographer from Chicago Magazine is coming. We don't want anything to distract from Hunter and Ainsley's moment. You understand?" I understood. I understood completely. I was an eyesore, a reminder of mortality in a room designed to celebrate a successful family. My father had calculated that my presence would cost more in optics than it would gain in familial affection. "I understand," I said, and I did. The engagement party happened without me. 300 guests, a string quartet. My mother posted 27 photos on her Facebook the next day. My father in a tuxedo beaming. Hunter and Ainsley in the center of a circle of laughing relatives. The caption read, "Our family's most joyful night." I screenshotted it, added it to the folder. Then I blocked my mother on Facebook. Not because I was angry, but because I needed to stop hurting myself. Some wounds you don't need to keep picking at. 3 months into chemo, the medical bills started stacking up. My insurance was decent. My firm had a good PPO, but a good PPO does not cover everything. After deductibles, co-pays, out-of-network imaging, and the anti-nausea medications that my plan considered a luxury, I was looking at $38,000. I had savings. Not enough. I sold my car first. Then I sold the vintage Eames lounge chair I had saved for 2 years to buy. Then I started skipping meals to pay the pharmacy. And then, because desperation makes you stupid, I asked my father for help. The text I sent him is still in my evidence folder. I typed it 17 times before I sent it. Dad, my out-of-pocket costs for treatment are higher than I expected. I've sold my car and my furniture. I'm asking if I could borrow $10,000. I'll sign any loan paperwork you want and pay it back with interest on any schedule you set. His response came 3 hours later. Delaney, your mother and I are currently committed to Hunter's wedding expenses. Ainsley's family has certain expectations and we need to meet them. Have you looked into medical fundraising platforms? People do those all the time now. Medical fundraising platforms. He wanted me to beg strangers on the internet. He wanted me to turn my cancer into a public performance of need so that his social circle wouldn't see him actually write a check for his daughter. I read that message 6 times. Then I took a screenshot, added it to the folder, turned off my phone. I want to pause here for a moment because, if you're still watching, I suspect some of you have a version of this story. Maybe yours doesn't involve cancer. Maybe it involves a divorce nobody showed up for, or a mental health crisis everyone talked around, or a job loss your family treated like a personal embarrassment. If you are nodding along right now, go ahead and drop the word "seen" in the comments. Just that word. I want to see how many of us are out there. The worst physical night came during cycle 5. My oncologist had warned me that the cumulative toxicity would build, each round harder than the last. By cycle 5, my mouth was full of ulcers. My fingernails had turned purple at the beds. My white count had dropped so low that any fever would mean hospitalization. At 1:42 a.m. on a Sunday in July, my temperature hit 103.2. I knew the rules. Any fever over 100.4 meant the ER immediately. I was alone. Tasha was in Minneapolis visiting her family. I was dizzy. I was hallucinating slightly. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called again. She didn't answer. I called a third time and a fourth. On the 5th call, I left a voicemail, my voice thin and shaking. Mom, I have a fever. I need to go to the ER. I can't drive. Please call me back. She called me back at 10:17 a.m. I was already at Northwestern, in an isolation room, hooked up to broad-spectrum antibiotics. I had taken a rideshare at 2 a.m. because I had nobody else. Delaney, honey, you called so many times last night. Is everything all right? My phone was charging in the kitchen and I didn't hear it. We had dinner with Ainsley's parents and I had a few glasses of wine and slept like the dead. I was lying in a hospital bed with a PICC line in my arm, and she was describing a pleasant dinner. Everything's fine, Mom. Oh, good. Listen, I wanted to ask you about the rehearsal dinner. Your father thinks you should sit at the second family table. Ainsley's aunts need to be at the head table, you understand. You won't mind, will you? No, Mom, I won't mind. I hung up. I looked at the ceiling tiles and counted them. I had a new understanding then of what family meant. It was not a noun. It was a verb. It was something people did. And my parents had stopped conjugating me into it a long time ago. I did not go to Hunter's wedding. The week of the wedding was the week of my 6th cycle. I was in the hospital with febrile neutropenia again. My mother sent me a single text the day of the wedding. It read, "Thinking of you today. Photos to come." I did not reply. 14 months after my diagnosis, Dr. Halpern used the phrase complete metabolic response. I sat in her office and listened to her explain that my PT scan was clean. No evidence of disease. She said it carefully, the way oncologists do, because they know better than to promise anyone anything, but she also smiled. She smiled at me for the first time in over a year. I walked out of the hospital into a gray Chicago afternoon, and I stood on the corner of Superior and Fairbanks and I cried. Not from relief, exactly, from exhaustion, from the weight of something I had been holding for 14 months, finally setting itself down. A man in a business suit stopped and asked if I was okay. I told him I was better than okay. He looked confused. I laughed. He laughed. Then he walked on, and I stood there a while longer, letting the cold air hit my face, and I made myself a promise. The old Delaney was dead. The woman who walked out of that hospital was going to build a life that had nothing to do with anyone who had failed her. A lot changed in the months that followed. I got promoted at the firm, principal level, with my name on the masthead. Halverson, Wright, and Brooks, associates. My boss, a woman named Ingrid Halverson, pulled me into her office and said, "Delaney, you did the most extraordinary work of your career while you were being poisoned every 3 weeks. I want everyone in this industry to know your name." That kind of belief, that kind of acknowledgement, from a woman who owed me nothing except a paycheck and chose to give me everything. I moved out of my Andersonville apartment. I bought a small brick row house in Logan Square with a back garden and a kitchen that got afternoon light. I bought myself a vintage silk robe the color of oxblood because I had always wanted one, and I wore it to make coffee every Sunday morning. Tasha got promoted too. She moved into a condo 6 blocks from my new place, and we started having Sunday dinners together. Her partner, a librarian named Deja, joined us, a life built out of people who showed up. A family I had chosen. I did not speak to my parents for 17 months. I blocked them on Facebook. I did not block their numbers because I wanted to see what they would do on their own. What they did was nothing. My mother sent me 3 texts in 17 months. "Merry Christmas," one said. "Happy birthday," said another, sent 2 days late. The third one, in August of the second year, was slightly longer. "Your father has been asking about you. Please call." I did not call. I had learned something during my illness that I was not going to unlearn to make my parents comfortable. Silence, I had learned, is also a language, and mine was fluent. Then, on a Thursday evening in late September, my phone rang. I was in my kitchen, roasting a chicken for Sunday dinner prep. The name on the screen was Mom. I stared at it for 4 rings. I almost didn't answer. But something, call it curiosity, call it the last dying ember of the daughter I used to be, made me pick up. "Hello, Delaney." Her voice was hoarse, like she had been crying. "Delaney, I need to tell you something." I turned down the stove. I sat at my kitchen table. The hairs on my arms were standing up. "What happened, Mom?" "Your father. He had a fall 2 weeks ago. We took him to Northwestern. They ran a lot of tests." She paused. "Delaney, he has early onset Alzheimer's, combined with some vascular issues. They're saying he may have been symptomatic for a year or more. We didn't realize." I said nothing. "Delaney, he doesn't have very long. Maybe 4 or 5 good years before he'll need full-time care. The doctors say the decline can be rapid." I said nothing. "We need to talk as a family, all of us. There's a dinner at the house this Sunday. Your father wants you there. We have things to discuss. Important things. About the future." I noticed in that silence that she had not asked me how I was. Not a single question about my health. Not a remission check-in. Not a, "How have you been?" Nothing. 17 months of silence, and she called me back to a dinner about my father's future. "I'll be there," I said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The chicken was burning. I didn't get up. I thought about the last 2 years, about the Bay 11 chair, about the fevered nights, about the $38,000, about the Facebook post that called my absence a family's most joyful night. Then I did something I had been saving. I opened the evidence folder. I had not opened it in over a year. It had 146 items in it: screenshots, call logs, voicemails I had saved, and the official visitor log from Northwestern's oncology unit that I had requested 3 times over the course of my treatment. Every page of that log had my name at the top, and the same word in the visitor column: none, 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 41 visits, 0 family visitors. I scrolled through the folder slowly. I made myself look at each item. I was not doing this for revenge. I was doing it for orientation, like a compass check before a long hike. I needed to remember exactly where North was before I walked back into that house. I called Tasha. "They want me at a family dinner Sunday. My dad is sick." Tasha was quiet. Then she said, "How sick?" "Early onset Alzheimer's. A few good years left." "Are you going?" "Yes." "Delaney." "Tash, I need to. I need to see them one more time with everything I know. I need to sit in that dining room with my evidence, and I need to be the last person standing." She thought about it for a moment. Then she said, "Bring your phone. The whole folder. And Delaney, promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you will not agree to anything at that table, no matter what they ask, no matter how much they cry. You come home first. You think. You call me. And then you decide." "I promise." That Friday, the day after my mother called, I did something I had not planned. I called Ingrid, my boss, and asked her for a favor. I asked her for a recommendation to an estate attorney, someone she trusted, someone discreet. She did not ask why. She just sent me a name and a phone number within the hour. The attorney's name was Robert Sato. He worked for a boutique firm in the Loop that specialized in estate and elder law. I called him Friday afternoon. I explained my situation in broad strokes. My father had just been diagnosed with a degenerative cognitive condition. My family was about to pressure me into a caregiving role. I wanted to understand my legal position, my rights, and any documents I should request before walking into that dinner. Robert asked me one question I did not expect. He asked if I knew the current status of my parents' estate plan. I told him I had no idea. He told me that given my father's diagnosis, any estate changes made from this point forward could potentially be challenged on the basis of diminished capacity. He also told me something else. He told me that I should, before the dinner, request a copy of my parents' most recent trust documents. Robert said something that stayed with me. "Miss Brooks, parents who have severely favored one child during their lives often become surprisingly fair in their estate planning after a health scare. You should not assume anything until you see the documents. You also should not let them pressure you into caregiving commitments that could compromise your own financial future." I thanked him. I paid his consultation fee. I hung up and I stared at my ceiling for a long time. Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. I dressed carefully. Not for battle, for clarity. A charcoal wool dress I had bought for my promotion announcement. Low black heels. Silver hoop earrings Tasha had given me the day I rang the bell at the end of chemo. No makeup except mascara. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a woman who had survived. Because I had. Tasha called me before I left. "You've got this. You are not the daughter they remember. You are the woman you became without them. Keep that in your chest." I put my phone in my purse. The evidence folder was ready. Screenshots, voicemails, visitor logs, medical bills, and one new addition. A voice memo I had recorded 14 months ago, on the morning I had been told I was in remission. In it, I had made myself a promise. Never again, I had said into the microphone. Never again will I light myself on fire for anyone who would not cross the street to bring me water. I drove to Evanston. My parents' house sat on a tree-lined street 2 blocks from the lake. A stone colonial, 3 stories, with a wrought iron gate and a gardener who came twice a week. I had grown up in that house, and I had never once felt safe in it. I parked on the street. I sat in the car for 6 minutes. I watched the warm lights in the dining room windows. I could see figures moving. My mother, probably arranging the centerpieces, the good china, the crystal. The set pieces of a family that had always cared more about how it looked than how it felt. I got out of the car. I walked up the path. I rang the doorbell. And I prepared, finally, to say the truth out loud. My mother opened the door. She had lost weight. Her hair, normally colored to within an inch of its life, had gray coming in at the roots. She looked, for the first time in my memory, older than 58. Delaney. Oh, Delaney. She pulled me into a hug before I could step back. She smelled the same. Joe Malone perfume, the grapefruit one. The same bottle she had worn at Hunter's engagement party. The party I had not been invited to. Mom, come in, please. Your father has been waiting. I stepped into the foyer and I braced myself. Nothing had changed. The same oriental runner on the hardwood. The same framed oil painting of the family sailboat. The same gallery wall of family photos. And I noticed, again, what I had noticed years ago. The photo timeline ran smoothly through Hunter's college graduation, Hunter's first promotion, Hunter's engagement, Hunter's wedding. My own documentation stopped at 22. There were no pictures of me at my license ceremony, no pictures of me at my firm's gala, nothing after a certain age. I had been curated out. I followed my mother into the dining room. Hunter was already there, standing next to his chair. He looked thicker than I remembered, the soft look of a man who had never been asked to struggle. Ainsley was seated next to him, 6 months pregnant, her hand resting protectively on her belly. She looked at me with an expression I could not immediately read. It was not hostile, it was something else. Watchful, maybe. Guarded. And at the head of the table sat my father. He had aged 10 years. His hair had thinned. His hands rested flat on the tablecloth, and I could see the slight tremor Robert had told me to watch for. His eyes, when they met mine, held something I had never seen in them. Fear. "Sit down, Delaney." His voice was softer than I remembered. Still commanding, but the steel was gone. I sat across from Hunter. I placed my purse on the empty chair beside me. My phone was inside it, turned on, voice memo quietly recording, the way Robert had told me I could in the state of Illinois as a party to the conversation. My mother served dinner. Beef tenderloin, roasted potatoes, haricots verts, the food of every important Brooks family meal. We ate in a silence that was so thick I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the next room. Hunter kept glancing at my father, then at my mother, then at his wife. Ainsley barely touched her food. When my mother cleared the plates, my father cleared his throat. "Delaney, I want to thank you for coming." I said nothing. I waited. "As your mother told you, I've been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I have some vascular involvement too. The doctors are telling me I have perhaps 4 or 5 years of reasonably good function, and then a longer period of decline. I need to plan for my care, and I need the family to be realigned to support that plan." Realigned, like we were office furniture. "We've been thinking as a family," he continued, "and we believe the best arrangement is for you to move back into this house. You work remotely part of the week. Your firm has been accommodating in the past. You don't have children or a spouse. You're the natural choice to be the primary caregiver. In exchange, we are prepared to make certain adjustments to the estate plan that will reflect your contribution." The word plunged into me like a hook. Adjustments. My father was trying to buy my servitude with the promise of an inheritance he had never intended to give me in the first place. "What kind of adjustments, Dad?" My mother flinched at my tone. Hunter looked at the table. My father, to his credit, met my eyes. "We would increase your share of the estate to equal Hunter's. Currently, Hunter is the primary beneficiary of the trust, with you receiving a smaller legacy distribution. We would restructure that to be equal, plus a caregiving stipend during the years of active care." "A smaller legacy distribution," I repeated. "How much smaller?" My father hesitated. Hunter was very still. Dad, how much smaller? Currently, you are set to receive $25,000. Hunter is set to inherit the remainder of the estate and the business. I let that number sit in the air. $25,000. After a lifetime of being their daughter. After cancer. $25,000 was less than 1 month's worth of medical bills from my treatment. And you're offering to make that equal, I said slowly, in exchange for me giving up my career, my home, my relationship, my life, to be your unpaid nurse for the next 10 to 15 years. It wouldn't be unpaid, my mother interjected quickly. The stipend. Mom, a stipend is not a salary. A stipend is not a retirement. A stipend is not the decade of career growth I would lose. You are asking me to trade my life for an inheritance. You should have left me equally in the first place. Delaney, my father's voice was sharper now. This family has done a great deal for you. And there it was. The old music. The song of obligation. This family has done a great deal for you. I reached into my purse slowly. I pulled out my phone. I placed it on the table face up. Before I answer, Dad, I'd like to ask you something. My mother tensed. Ask. When was the last time you called to check on my health? He stared at me. When was the last time, I continued, you asked whether I was still in remission, whether my scans were clean, whether I had any lingering health concerns from treatment? The silence was absolute. What are you talking about? Hunter finally said, looking at my father. What treatment? What remission? And I realized in that moment that my father had never told him. My parents had kept my cancer a secret from my own brother, not because they wanted to protect me, because they didn't want it mentioned at the wedding. Hunter, I had stage 3 lymphoma. I was diagnosed on a Tuesday in March 2 years ago. I went through 7 months of chemotherapy. I almost died twice from febrile neutropenia. I am currently in remission, but I am still under monitoring. I am still considered high risk. Hunter's face had gone white. He turned to my mother. Is this true? She would not look at him. Mom, Hunter, we did not want to upset you during your engagement. She was my sister. She had cancer. Hunter's voice cracked. I had never, in my entire life, heard my brother's voice crack. You told me she was too busy with work to come to the engagement party. You told me she was too tired to come to the wedding. You said she had chosen her career over the family. I did not let myself feel anything about that yet. I would feel it later. Right now, I needed to stay in my own spine. Hunter, I want to show you something. I unlocked my phone. I opened the evidence folder. I slid the phone across the mahogany table to him. These are screenshots of every text I sent to Mom and Dad during my treatment, their replies, my call logs, the voicemails I left, the visitor log from Northwestern's oncology unit, which shows exactly 0 family visits over 41 chemo appointments, the texts where I asked Dad for $10,000 to cover my medical bills, and he suggested I start a crowdfunding campaign. Scroll. All of it is there. Hunter scrolled. His hand was shaking. Ainsley leaned over his shoulder to read. I watched her face change. Her mouth tightened. Her hand left her belly and found Hunter's forearm, and she gripped it hard. My father said, "This is not the whole story." Then tell me the rest of it, Dad. There were reasons. The timing was impossible. Your brother's wedding. The business was in transition. I was not well myself even then, though I did not know it. We were all stretched thin. Stretched thin, I said. Stretched thin did not stop you from paying $90,000 for Hunter's wedding while telling me to start a GoFundMe. My mother made a small sound. Ainsley had stopped scrolling. She was staring at a particular screenshot. I could not see which one. She looked up at me. This text, she said quietly. The one dated June 18th. The one where he says the wedding budget cannot accommodate a loan. I nodded. Gregory. Ainsley's voice was shaking. We had an emergency at that time. My mother called you both in tears because our caterer had doubled their deposit. You wrote a check for $22,000 to cover it. On June 19th. I remember because my mother cried when you handed it to her. Silence. You wrote a $22,000 check for a catering overrun the day after you told your daughter with cancer that you could not loan her $10,000 for chemotherapy. My father did not respond. Ainsley turned to Hunter. Her voice was low and even. Hunter, I am going home tonight. I am going to my parents' house. I need some time, because if this is true, and I can see that it is true, then I have married into something I do not understand, and I need to decide what kind of family I am bringing this child into. Hunter looked at me. His eyes were full of something I had never expected to see from him. It was not pity. It was not even grief exactly. It was something closer to shame. And for the first time in our adult lives, I felt something shift between us. Not repair, not forgiveness, but a small crack in the wall that had separated us since childhood, the wall our parents had built brick by treating us like competitors instead of siblings. Delaney, Hunter said, his voice thick. I am so sorry. I did not know. I would have been there. If I had known, I would have been there. I looked at him. I wanted to believe him. Some part of me did. Another part of me, the part that had survived on my own, knew that not knowing was its own kind of choice. You can choose not to ask questions about a sister who has disappeared. You can choose to believe the easy story your parents tell you. My brother, in his own way, had chosen. But at least now, finally, he was looking. My mother was crying openly now. Not the decorative tears I was used to from her, but a real wet grief that she had no makeup left to hide. My father's trembling hand was flat against the tablecloth, and his eyes had gone somewhere far away. There is one more thing I need to say, I said, and then I am going to give you my answer. I took my phone back from Hunter. I pulled up one more document. This one I had not shown anyone yet. I had received it Friday afternoon, 3 days before this dinner, and I had been holding it for exactly this moment. Dad, do you remember Elliot Kasparian? My father's head came up slowly. Your estate attorney, the one you fired 2 years ago. Delaney, how do you? I met with Robert Sato on Friday. He's an estate and elder law attorney. After you were diagnosed, he told me I should try to contact any previous attorneys who may have worked on your trust documents. Because once a person is diagnosed with a cognitive condition, any changes to the trust can be challenged. So I called Mr. Kasparian's office Friday morning. He retired last year, but his practice was taken over by a colleague. My mother went very still. They sent me, as a potentially named beneficiary entitled to know my status, a copy of the most recent trust amendment executed while your capacity was legally unquestioned. It was drafted 18 months ago. You will remember it, because you fired Mr. Kasparian immediately after he insisted on it. My father's mouth opened slightly. Delaney, that document is not. He stopped. He could not finish the sentence. His hands were shaking visibly now. According to this document, Dad, you and Mom executed a trust that divides the estate equally between me and Hunter. 50-50. The real estate, the business interests, everything. It was signed and notarized. 3 witnesses. All the legal boxes checked. Hunter looked up sharply. But I kept my voice even. 3 months after that trust was signed, you fired Elliot Kasparian and hired a new attorney, a man named Derek Voss. And 6 weeks after my cancer diagnosis, in the middle of planning Hunter's engagement party, you executed a new trust with Mr. Voss that cut my share down to a $25,000 legacy distribution and made Hunter the primary beneficiary of everything else. The silence that followed was different from the silences earlier. This one had weight. This one felt like something collapsing. Dad, Hunter said. His voice had gone hoarse. Is this true? My father was staring at the tablecloth. You cut her out. When she had cancer. You took away her share of the estate when she was sick and dying. Hunter? My mother's voice was thready. It was not like that. Then how was it, Mom? My mother could not answer. Let me help her explain it, I said. Dad, you and Mom had decided after my diagnosis that I was likely to die. You made an actuarial decision. If I was going to die anyway, there was no reason to leave me half the estate. Hunter was the only one who was going to survive to carry the name. So you reallocated. You did the math, Dad. You looked at your daughter, and you did the math. And when I survived, you did not restore the trust. You left it the way you had written it when you thought I was dying. And then, when you got sick yourself, you decided to use that same trust as a bargaining chip to trap me into caring for you. That is not. My father's voice broke. Delaney, that is not what happened. Then why did you not change the trust back when I went into remission, Dad? I rang the bell at Northwestern 14 months ago. I have been in remission ever since. In 14 months, you did not call me once. You did not restore my share. You did not even tell me the trust had been changed. You let me believe I had a sister's share, and you planned to use the threat of disinheritance as leverage to make me move back into this house and become your nurse. Ainsley had stood up. She was gathering her purse. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. Hunter, I am leaving. You can come with me or you can stay and finish this conversation with your parents. But I will not sit at this table another minute. Hunter stood up too. He looked at my father for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Delaney, I am going with Ainsley tonight. I need to think. But I am telling you right now in front of our parents that if what you have said about the trust is true, and I believe that it is, I will not accept $1 of inheritance that came from cutting you out. Not $1. The trust will be restored to equal, or I will contest it myself. I did not expect that. I want to be honest. I did not expect my brother to say that. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father's son become his own man. It was a small thing. It was also the first real kindness my brother had ever offered me. Thank you, Hunter. He nodded. He walked around the table to me. He did not try to hug me. He just put his hand on my shoulder for a moment and said, I am sorry. For all of it. Including what I did not know to stop. Then he and Ainsley left. I heard the front door open and close. I heard their car start in the driveway. I heard it pull away. And then it was just me, and my mother, and my father. 3 of us at a table that had been built for 12. My father began to cry. Not decorously, not quietly. He cried the way men cry when they have never been taught how to do it, which is to say, badly, like he was coughing something up. His shoulders shook. His hands shook. He tried to reach across the table toward me, and his hand trembled so badly he knocked over a water glass. Delaney, please. Dad. Please. I know. I know what I did. I know. I am begging you. I am an old, sick man, and I am begging my daughter. Please do not leave me alone at the end of my life. I looked at him. At this man who had terrified me my whole childhood. At this man who had told me cancer could wait. At this man who had bet against my survival with a notary and 3 witnesses. And I felt something I did not expect. Not pity. Clarity. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. None of the speeches felt right now. What came out was simple. Dad, I hear you, and I understand that you are scared. I want you to hear something from me in return. He nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. 2 years ago, I called you from a hospital stairwell. I told you I had cancer. I told you I was terrified. And you said, and I have it recorded so I know the exact words, you said, Delaney, we have a lot happening with your brother right now. Can this wait? My mother closed her eyes. So here are my 5 words, Dad. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I looked at him steadily. I was not angry. I was not even satisfied. I was simply free. I cannot wait for you. 5 words. I let them sit there in the air above my father's head. I watched him take them in. I watched the shape of them travel through his face. I watched the moment he understood that I was not refusing him. I was giving him back exactly what he had given me, with interest. My mother made a broken sound. Delaney, please, what can we do? What can we do to make this right? I thought about that question for a moment. Really thought about it. Because it was the first real question either of them had asked me in 24 months. Mom, there is nothing you can do to make it right. Right is not available anymore. The window for right closed on the bathroom floor in July of last year, when I had a fever of 103 and you were sleeping off a dinner party. Right closed at the infusion center when Bay 11 was empty 41 times. Right is gone. Then, her voice was a whisper. Then what is left? What is left is truth. And maybe if you both do the work, over a long time, if you restore the trust and take no part in any elder care discussion that puts my life on pause, and if you accept that I will see you when I choose to see you, and not on a schedule that requires anything of me, maybe what will be left is a thin and careful relationship that you will have to earn for the rest of your lives. Maybe. Delaney. My father's voice was broken. What about my care? Dad, you have money. You have a son who loves you enough to forgive you. You have a daughter-in-law who, despite what she has learned tonight, may still be willing to help you. You will hire a professional caregiver. You will use the money you have for the purpose it was supposed to serve. You will not liquidate my life to save yourself a line item. I walked toward the door. I did not hurry. I did not run. I walked past the family photos that stopped at my 22nd birthday. I walked past the crystal chandelier my grandmother had supposedly brought from County Cork. I walked past all of it. My mother followed me to the foyer. Delaney, one more thing, just one, please. I turned. Do you think, is it possible, that someday, you will be able to forgive us? I thought about it. I gave her an honest answer. It was a gift I did not owe her, but I gave it anyway. Mom, forgiveness is not a finish line. It's a direction. I do not know if I will ever fully forgive you. I do know that I am no longer willing to be at war with you. That is the only promise I can make tonight. A ceasefire. Not peace. Not yet. She nodded. She was weeping silently. I opened the door. I stepped into the cool October air. I walked to my car and I drove away from the house I had grown up in. And this time I knew I was driving away for the last time. Not from my parents, necessarily. Some part of them might still show up in my life someday, smaller and chastened and less demanding. But from the daughter I had been inside those walls. From the girl who had spent 31 years trying to earn a love that had never been for sale. I want to tell you what happened in the weeks that followed, because that is where the real lessons live. Revenge is a short song. The life you build afterward is the long one. Hunter called me the next morning. He had spent the night at Ainsley's parents' house. He had not slept. He told me he had called our father's estate attorney first thing that morning and demanded a full audit of every document our father had signed in the past 2 years. He told me that he had instructed the attorney that any trust currently in effect that disadvantaged me was to be treated as contested as of that day. He told me that he and Ainsley had spent the night having the longest conversation of their marriage and that they had decided to move out of the condo our father had bought them as a wedding present. They were going to rent an apartment on their own salaries. He said he did not want to live another day inside a gift that had come from my exclusion. I want to be clear that my brother did not become a saint overnight. We did not fall into each other's arms and heal decades of family damage in a single phone call. What he did was a beginning, a first real step. And I allowed it to be that. No more, no less. A beginning. My father was admitted to a memory care facility 6 months later. The progression was faster than anyone had predicted. He had a second fall in December, a third in February. By the time spring arrived, my mother could no longer safely care for him at home. She did not ask me to move in. She hired a professional caregiver first, and then, when that was not enough, she placed him in a facility in Glenview. I visited him once. It was brief. He did not recognize me at first. When he did, he cried. I held his hand for 20 minutes. I did not promise him anything. I did not offer forgiveness. I offered presence for exactly that one afternoon. Then I drove home. My mother and I are in something now that I would not call a relationship. But that is no longer a war. She sends me cards on my birthday. Real cards, with handwritten notes. She has been seeing a therapist. She signed up for a grief support group for spouses of Alzheimer's patients. I wish her well. I wish her that from a distance. Ainsley had a baby girl in January. They named her Willa. Ainsley asked me if I would be her godmother. I said yes. I said yes because Ainsley had proven herself the night of that dinner. She had looked at the evidence, she had connected the dots, and she had stood up from the table before anyone asked her to. A woman who will do that in real time is a woman worth saying yes to. I see Willa most Sundays now. I am teaching her to be loud when something is wrong. She is 8 months old and already she screams with real conviction. I am very proud. My work has been the steadiest part of my life. Halverson, Wright, and Brooks became Halverson, Wright, Brooks, and Oduya 6 months ago. Tasha made partner. She cried when Ingrid told her. She cried harder when she saw her name on the stationery. We are designing a cancer center now, actually, for a hospital system in Indianapolis. I fought to be on the project because I have opinions about what those spaces should feel like. I have opinions, for example, about the infusion chairs. I have opinions about whether the windows should show the sky. I have opinions about whether the floor plan should make it possible to feel dignified even when you are alone in Bay 11. The architects who designed my infusion center did not ask anyone who had ever sat in one of those chairs. I am making sure the architects of this one do. I started dating someone about 4 months after the dinner. His name is Marcus. He is a public defender. He is 40. He has a daughter from a previous relationship who spent our third date drawing a picture of me with what she called professional hair. I keep the drawing on my refrigerator. We are slow. We are careful. We are building something that does not require me to become smaller to fit it. That is, I have learned, the only kind of love worth building. Tasha and I still have Sunday dinners. Now Marcus comes. Ainsley and Hunter come when they can. Willa screams through most of them. Deja brings a different dessert every week. We have made a family out of people who showed up. People who are still showing up. That is what a family is. Not the people you were born to. The people who keep choosing you, again and again, on the ordinary Sundays, when there is nothing to gain from it. If you have made it this far, I want to talk to you directly for a moment. If you are watching this from a hospital bed, or a bathroom floor, or a stairwell in a building where nobody knows your name, hear me. The people who are not showing up for you right now are telling you something about themselves, not about you. Their absence is not your failure. You are not a project they have failed at. You are a person they have chosen not to love well. There is a difference, and it matters. You are allowed to document. You are allowed to screenshot. You are allowed to keep the receipts. This is not petty. This is not dramatic. This is called orientation, and it will save your sanity later when the people who failed you try to rewrite the history of how they failed you. Write it down. Date it. Keep the folder. You are not collecting ammunition. You are collecting proof that you were not crazy, that it really happened the way you remember. You are allowed to walk away. You do not owe a single sacrifice to anyone who was not at your bedside when you were sick. You do not owe forgiveness on anyone's timeline but your own. Forgiveness, when it comes, if it comes, is a gift to the version of you who is trying to stop carrying them. You are allowed to choose your family. Blood is not a contract. It is a coincidence of biology. The people who make you feel safe enough to cry and loud enough to laugh are your family. And finally, you are allowed to save yourself first. Most of us were taught that a good daughter sets herself on fire to keep others warm. Nobody benefits from your ashes. The best thing you can do for the people you love is stay alive and intact and yourself. Those 5 words I said to my father, "I cannot wait for you," were not a weapon. They were a mirror. I held up the same shape he had handed me 2 years earlier and let him see it. That is sometimes the most honest thing you can do. Not cruel, not kind, just accurate. I am sitting in my row house as I record this. My oxblood robe is on the hook by the door. Clementine the cat is asleep on the windowsill. Tasha just texted that she and Deja are bringing pasta tonight. Willa is going to be here. Marcus is going to bring the bread. There will be more of us than can fit at the table, and some of us will eat standing up at the kitchen counter, and someone will spill wine on the runner, and someone else will laugh too loud, and the dishes will pile up, and I will not care. Because this, finally, is the thing I almost did not live to build. A life crowded with people who chose me. If you are in the middle of the hardest chapter of your life right now, I want you to know that it is possible to get here. Not because I am special, because I was not. I am just somebody who decided, eventually, that my life was worth more than the approval of people who had already shown me exactly what they thought of it. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. If this story moved something in you, consider letting me know in the comments. Tell me about the person in your life who showed up for you when nobody else did. I want to read every single one of those stories. I want us to be a record of the people who did the right thing. Those people deserve to be named, and if you are the person who has been showing up for someone quietly, without being asked, without being thanked, somebody somewhere right now is writing you into their evidence folder, not as harm, as proof. Proof that the world had goodness in it, when they needed it most. 3 last things. 1. You do not owe your sacrifice to people who were not present for your suffering. 2. Documentation is not revenge, it is memory insurance. 3. A boundary is not a wall. It is a gate you choose when to open. If you want to hear the next story, there is another one waiting for you in the description. It is about a woman who learned, on the day of her wedding, that her maid of honor had been keeping a very specific kind of secret for 15 years. I think you will want to see how that one ends. Until then, take care of yourself. Not someday. Today. I mean it.